Hello and welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. Last week, a UK paper revealed the Nigerian government was right in the middle of negotiating a release for the Chibok girls with Boko Haram when it pulled out. According to the paper, the decision not to continue with the deal, which would have involved releasing about 100 Boko Haram members locked up in prison for the girls, happened on the weekend. President Goodluck Jonathan was in Paris for the security meeting with the presidents of Cameroon, Chad, Niger and Benin Republic on the invite of the French President François Hollande. And while many Nigerians have expressed outrage over the government's ignoring a window of opportunity in securing the girls' release, some analysts say the decision may have been a good one, as there is no telling what Boko Haram will do if it had 100 of its members back in the fold. Now, keep that in mind as we go to another related story, this time in faraway Afghanistan, where one U.S. soldier, 28-year-old Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl, was released over the weekend after 5 years of being held captive by the Taliban in exchange for the release of 5 top Taliban leaders imprisoned in the U.S. correctional facility in Cuba. The Afghan Taliban leader, Mullah Muhammad Omar, issued a rare public statement in which he said the prisoner swap was a big victory for the Taliban. He said he was extending his heartfelt congratulations to the entire Afghan Muslim nation. And while Sergeant Bergdahl's family and friends are waiting to welcome him back home in Idaho, U.S. Republicans have criticized the deal, saying it shows the U.S. government as being soft on terrorism. That has been countered by sources close to the Taliban, who say negotiating this deal took such a long time because the U.S. wanted to widen the scope of the talks, and that this precise deal was offered 3 years ago. But negotiations did not follow through because the United States wanted more than a prisoner swap.
Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl's freedom has come as a big relief for his family and the U.S. government. For 5 years, he had been held captive by the Taliban in Afghanistan, appearing in a few videos in which he pleaded for his release. After a deal spanning 3 years, Sergeant Bergdahl was freed on Saturday, May the 31st. A U.S. defense official said he was able to walk and became emotional on his way to freedom after being handed over to U.S. Special Forces in eastern Afghanistan on Saturday. But his release came at a cost. 5 of the Taliban's most top members would be released to the Qatari government from the U.S. correctional facility in Cuba. Qatar's foreign minister, Khaled al-Attiyah, praised the efforts of Qatari negotiators who worked to secure the release alongside the U.S. government. His Highness the Emir directed the concerned authorities in the state to start this mediation, which succeeded after long negotiations. I have to thank Qatar's negotiating team who made effort to achieve this result according to the best traditions followed by Qatar's policy in humanitarian efforts. In this specific case, it was for a humanitarian cause. U.S. military aircraft flew the 5 Taliban detainees to Qatar. The men had been held at the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba since 2002 and were classed by the Pentagon as high risk and likely to pose a threat. According to the U.S. military, 2 were also implicated in the murder of thousands of minority Shiite Muslims in Afghanistan. The Taliban denied the prisoners would return to battle, but said the swap should not be regarded as a gesture of goodwill or a step towards the revival of peace talks between Islamist insurgents and the Afghan government. While the Afghan Taliban leader Mullah Muhammad Omar issued a rare public statement on Sunday, hailing the exchange of the detainees, describing it as a big victory, members of the Afghan parliament and residents of Kabul are concerned that it could enhance terrorism in Afghanistan and cause violence, something that will no doubt affect the Afghan government, its people, and the American government in a negative way. But the U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel is hopeful the prisoner swap would lead to more negotiations with the Taliban.
Primary focus, I think, as you all know, was getting Sergeant Bergdahl back. And We've done that, as I said, as President Obama said, as a result of the help of a lot of people. And so that's our first focus. Whether that could lead to possible new breakthroughs with the Taliban, I don't know. Hopefully it might. But we pursued this effort specifically to get Sergeant Bergdahl back. As to another part of your question, could this embolden terrorists? Again, I remind you, this was a prisoner of war.
Bergdahl's release came after President Barack Obama outlined a plan last Tuesday to withdraw all but 9,800 American soldiers from Afghanistan by the end of the year, and the rest by 2016, ending more than a decade of U.S. military engagement. The Afghan Ministry of Foreign Affairs insists that handing over prisoners to a third country is a breach of international law. It says, "We are strongly opposed to it. We want Qatar and the U.S. government to let the men go free." But back home in the United States, it is a debate heating up on the prisoner swap. Senator John McCain said the detainees were some high-risk people. But Republican Representative Adam Kinzinger said he would celebrate Sergeant Bergdahl's return, but called the release of the Afghans shocking.
Now let's bring it back home to the over 200 Chibok schoolgirls abducted by Boko Haram. At first, their leader, Shekau, was threatened to sell them at a market supposedly here in Africa because he felt led to. Then he releases a video online in which some of the girls are seen reciting the Quran and in short, separate interviews tell of their conversion. And then we hear of a deal turned awry for the release of the girls in exchange for 100 Boko Haram members imprisoned in Nigeria. While the popular rule in international relations when it comes to terrorism is not